This is TWiT. I guess the big story of the week really is a twofold story, all about the story of streaming and what the hell is happening with it. First thing happens, Netflix, in their Q1 financials, revealed that for the first time ever, they lost subscribers, a couple of 100,000 subscribers versus 2.5 million expected. And of course, it's the first time ever they've gained every year since they were founded, I think. Immediately, the market reacted by killing Netflix value by almost a third. It might be more than a third by now. A huge plummet. And I guess the feeling is this is the beginning of the end for Netflix, which kind of surprises me. Netflix response is, well, we're looking at ad-supported programming, which would, for me, definitely kill Netflix. Seems the wrong way to go. You know, Netflix blamed there are a couple of things that clearly make a difference. The broad variety of streamers now. You have many, many choices. Disney Plus, Peacock, Hulu. Netflix is just one of them. You also have, so you have competition for them, but they've also been hurting Netflix by pulling back on the programs they own. Peacock pulled out The Office, Disney pulled out Marvel's content, so Netflix is losing a lot of its catalog to the competition. And then their answer, which was a good answer, was to make original programming, but they spent $13 billion last year on original programming, and it's kind of hard to imagine that that's a sustainable strategy. So Netflix in trouble. And this affects you too, Nate. Netflix is big in the UK.
It's big, but actually one of the things we were looking at this week is how subscriber numbers to all streaming services are really going down in Britain. And a lot of people are wondering, why is this happening in particular in the UK? And a lot of people are looking at the cost of energy in Britain, which went up by about 50% in April, which doesn't sound like it would necessarily impact streaming directly. But most households in the UK had their energy bills sort of go up by 50% literally overnight, and they're going to go up again in October by a similar amount. So one of the first things I think people have been looking at is, well, do we need this many subscriptions? Do we need Netflix and Disney Plus and Apple TV and all of these other things that we have? And I think a lot of the answers now is, well, no, we don't. And I don't necessarily think it dooms Netflix, because the numbers are still enormous. You know, we're still talking hundreds of millions of subscribers, but it's definitely a concern. And as you noted with the share price, which is something that we look at a lot, obviously at Bloomberg, you know, it started the year at something like 600, and it closed on Friday at about 200. So wow. I mean, it's just absolutely annihilated, and a lot of very prominent investors have lost money, and notably lost money by selling at this loss and actually saying, you know what, we don't think this is going to get any better, so we're going to counter losses, you know, get out now. And some people have been saying that was a smart move, but it must be deeply challenging, particularly when you look at the wider market and the fact that streaming is growing. It's a sign that Netflix just cannot keep all these people to itself anymore. At least not consistently.
Bill Ackman is one of the investors. He's the lead at Pershing Square. He got into Netflix just a few months ago. Whoops. In January, bought 3.1 million shares. Shares have fallen 60% since then. He sold all those shares, netting a $400 million loss. Yikes.
Yeah, that's the chap.
But somebody like that will only do that if he says, look, there's only downside here. I see no upside.
This is the thing, and a lot of people, you know, particularly retail investors, will talk about, you know, buy the dip, and there's a lot of logic in that a lot of the time. But when something so disastrous comes along, as what happened this week with Netflix's figures and the forecast to lose even more subscribers, then the smart money sometimes is on, well, if you're going to lose something, lose the least amount possible. And that at least seems to be Ackman's strategy here. Whether or not that'll continue, who knows? Maybe this is an even bigger dip to buy.
Netflix has 3 C's that are a problem. You've got cost, you've got competition, and you've got content. Now, cost and competition, those are
Did you just make that up?
I just made that up.
That's really good.
But I mean,
that's exactly the 3 problems. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because the first two you can fix. You can price your service better to be more competitive. But the problem is content. And this is where it becomes a long-term issue for Netflix. Amazon and Disney, which are number 2 and 3, are fine. They've got plenty of content that is actually pretty dang good. Amazon just bought an entire catalog from Paramount, and Disney is never going to be running out of content in the next 15 or so years. But when you start looking at how Netflix has been stocking up its content, it's with, pardon my French, crap. It's horrible, horrible stuff. It's a lot of foreign programs that nobody wants.
They have some successful movies. They were able to lure Scorsese over and make a 3-hour film called The Irishman. They almost won an Oscar for Roma 2 years ago. They have some very successful streaming original content.
And that's great, but it only means I have to subscribe 1 month out of the year.
Right.
I can binge everything I want to watch on Netflix in 1 month, and then I'm done. So, where I am right now is I almost don't want to steal the password for Netflix from one of my friends.
Do you have Netflix?
I have Netflix. I'm not paying for Netflix.
So you left out, there's 3 C's, but there's also an R. It's like Creedence Clearwater, CCR. CCCR, which is revenue. And that's one of the things Netflix is trying to do, go after password sharing. They claim 100 million people are using Netflix with a shared password. I admit, my kids who had my password when they lived with me, they were part of my household. When they moved out, I didn't change the password on them. So they're still watching Netflix. But I have to say, I don't think those 100 million people are necessarily all going to become subscribers. I do like Netflix's apparent plan. They're trying this already in Central and South America. Is to, instead of saying we're going to cut these people off, they're just going to charge you a couple extra bucks a month for the other people. So it's very likely that Dad, who's paying for the Henry and Abby, will pay a couple extra bucks a month for each of them, then have to make the phone call and saying, I'm cutting off your Netflix, kids. Get your own account. What do you think, Lisa? Is Netflix worth, what is it, 12 bucks a month now?
I think it's hard because I think it goes back to what we were just talking about. It's all about the content. And I think, if Netflix does start charging more to have, more people on their account, just like you were talking about what they're piloting right now in some locations, I think this is going to be a big test for Netflix. I think we're going to figure out, how crucial is it really to people? Are they willing to pay more? I think you'll have a lot of those conversations of, like you were saying, Dad might call you up and say, hey, are you using Netflix? Do I need to upgrade, or can I just, cut you out?
Oh, that's a good way. Thank you for giving me the wording. Hey, are you using it still?
Yeah, exactly. I could see that happening a lot. But I do think the competition is a big part of it. And, Netflix was comfortable for a long time because they were really the first to popularize streaming. And they were also one of the first to have really good original shows like House of Cards. But it's, they obviously can't just keep doing the same things anymore because the competition has changed so much.
I think that's what the market is saying. Not so much that it's over for Netflix, but that the heyday of streaming is over. I mean, we had 2 very good years during COVID. Maybe they're feeling like, well, okay, but people aren't going to be staying home as much anymore, and they're not going to be paying because times are tight with the recession and inflation. They're maybe not going to want to pay that extra subscription. What's the first one to go? That's the real question.
Yeah, it's true. Mm-hmm. Well, I also think people sign up for one show and then they cancel, just like, we were talking about before. So I think that's part of it too. I think to really keep people in, they just need to have a really good catalog of good shows. Like Netflix is kind of like a cable replacement, right? Like people don't usually sign up to watch just one show and then, quit. I feel like that's something that you see more with like maybe Showtime or some of these other, streamers that were a little bit later to the game. But I think if Netflix really wants to keep subscribers from, just having that be the first one off the chopping block, they need to just make sure they have like a really big back catalog of stuff that can essentially, fill that cable hole for a lot of people.
At the stock market,
Leo
might have looked at the top 10 shows on Netflix in the U.S. It's always a bad sign when a network goes to reality programming, right? That's cheap.
Yeah.
And it's usually a kind of drive to the bottom. Number 1, Selling Sunset. Number 2, Conversations with a Killer, the John Wayne Gacy tapes. I don't know. I think The Marked Heart is fiction. Anatomy of a Scandal, probably fiction. Bridgerton, well, Bridgerton's just hot. And The Ultimatum, I don't watch it. The Ultimatum, Marry or Move On, number 6. This is kind of looks like a bad sign.
I am the best boss.
Huh? Somebody say something? Oh,
I think that was my Netflix that for some reason managed to reach through here.
Oh, okay.
When I was trying to find what the popular equivalents in the UK were. I didn't.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why.
This is a what do they call it? It's carousel. I haven't seen before. The top 10 shows in the US today.
Okay, so the top ones here are actually fairly similar in the UK.
Yeah.
Selling Sunset, Anatomy of a Scandal, the John Wayne, Heartstopper, Bridgerton,
Yeah.
The Missing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Netflix can fix this.
How?
All they have to do is move to a metered plan. $5 a month, 40 hours of programming. No one's going to share it if you're going to be using up your hours.
That's an interesting idea. And then it's less, so maybe you won't get rid of it. And you could probably think of 5 hours to watch.
Exactly.
And most people like me are going to end up watching more than 5 hours, probably. So
yeah, and so you go up to the next level.
Go to the next tier.
Also, Leo, we predicted this 10 years ago. Back in the early days of TWiT in cord cutters, when we were talking about cutting the cord, and we talked about the rise of streaming services, there was a prediction about how all of the studios are going to want to get on this. They see what Netflix has. They're going to want to start their own streaming services. It's going to take a while for them to build their catalogs, to build their technology. But eventually we're going to get to the point where people are going to start saying, I don't want to have 5 or 6 different subscriptions a month to watch all the programming I want. That's where we are right now. This is the culling. We've reached the bottleneck.
Is it over for cord cutting? I had a caller today on the radio show said, I just signed up for cable again because I couldn't find the shows I wanted. It was getting more and more expensive. Cord cutting no longer saves you money if you include the cost of internet. I think maybe it's the end of cord cutting.
I think I saw some report that I think said on average Americans spend $47 per month on streaming services. I mean, that's like getting into cable territory again. So
especially when you add the $40 or 50 or 60 in my case for your internet access. Now you're at $100.
And also, if the cable companies are catching up to streaming and are offering more on-demand options and things like that allow people to watch what they want instead of just defaulting to whatever happens to be on right now, I feel like, there is a compelling case for just going back to cable instead of signing up for 5 different streaming services to get everything you want.
Yeah.
Have you seen Samsung TV?
I have not.
So it's something that I just bought my parents a brand new 70-inch TV for their house in Las Vegas. And they're actually, when I first installed it, and it took all of the information, where we were and what locality we were in, we got access completely free, no subscription, to about 3,000 channels over Samsung TV.
Wow.
And that's free forever, which includes local TV. And they've now cut the cable. They don't need anything. They've got everything they want, and they're not paying any subscription fees.
Now
that's not huge, but it's awesome.
I don't know if they know, but you know that the reason Samsung does this is because now they are getting marketing information from them and sending, right? I mean, that's where the revenue stream is, I would guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it tells you at the beginning, it tells you this is exactly what's going to be happening. Yeah. This is what we're using.
But I think most people,
for.
If you got free locals, sure, I'll do that. You're going to sell my information back to advertisers? Well, I don't care if I get free TV. That's interesting. Do they still, Nate, forgive me my ignorance, do you still have to buy a license to watch TV in the UK?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, you do.
That's backward.
It is. I mean, there is a lot of controversy around this at the moment because the BBC is... I don't want to say it's having its lunch eaten by the streaming giants, but it's certainly having a lot of its food taken by the streaming giants. The BBC license fee, in a nutshell, it used to be you paid it, anyone who had a TV paid the license fee, and then your TV was free. And bear in mind, that has now moved to the point that it's streaming, it's back catalogue, it's the BBC News, it's radio, it's podcasts, it's all that other stuff, and it is entirely ad-free, and that's the thing that makes it big difference. Like, it is illegal even to show ads. Like, you cannot show ads on it. So it's a completely different model, and it does work, and it is actually very, very good value if you're someone who values BBC content. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who say it is a tax that shouldn't be paid. It should be a subscription model. It should be paid monthly. It should be privatized, and it should be made to compete better with the likes of Netflix. But it's withstood that. And a lot of the reason is because it's not just TV. It is a huge wealth of other things as well. And that sort of kept people kind of happy with it for the most part, at least.
I feel like at a remove anyway, because we don't see everything. The BBC is the gold standard for broadcasting, both radio and television. And I would be glad to pay. What's the license fee? How much does it cost?
I think I'd have to check. So I just renewed it, but it renews automatically. It's something like about £140 a year.
Oh, that is a lot. That's Netflix territory.
A little steep. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in dollars, that's probably about $180 a year.
That's more than Netflix.
Yeah, it probably is more than Netflix, but it is it's almost incomparable to Netflix in terms of the subscription and what you get for it, because it is, you're paying for the newsroom. It funds everything the BBC does. And I'm not a BBC apologist. I should throw that out there. There's an awful lot I don't like about what the BBC does and the way the model is. But, there is a lot of educational stuff that comes with that. There is a lot of, international bureaus full of journalists, which obviously as a journalist myself is something that I know is not cheap and is very, very valuable, particularly, more so now than ever, possibly. So
if you want a democracy, you better damn well have a free. Now, I don't know how free and independent the BBC is, but you better have a free and independent journalism in your country to report on the misuse of power, or otherwise you have nobody. You have no idea what's going on.
And the idea is that it's meant to be unbiased. It doesn't have a political agenda. A lot of people.
Is there political influence at all on the BBC?
I mean, there's political influence in everything, right? You can't get away from it. But the goal is that it doesn't have that influence. Personally, you can never get that right. I just don't think it's possible, and I don't think the BBC gets it right at all. And there is a lot of establishment-related problems with the BBC from the top, which is kind of out of step with what a lot of people experience in their day-to-day lives, as is also the case in politics. So there are parallels there.
If it were tax-supported, though, I think that'd be more of a peril than a license fee, I guess. I don't know. The
license fee, for all intents and purposes, is a tax.
It's a tax,
because
I guess.
It's a legal requirement.
Yeah.
But if you ask most people who would watch a show like This Week in Tech and who are in the tech world and who are generally pretty familiar with the way that the modern world works as far as tech and streaming goes, you would not find that many people who think that what the BBC does is bad. But there is a lot to be said for ways it could be brought up to date.
Our problem in the United States is all media is corporate. It tends to be owned, and increasingly so, by oligarchs. And so that's really a problem. And part of the problem that Netflix and streaming and cord cutting is having is that the people who distribute the content are increasingly buying the content creators. They are the one and the same, which now means they have a monopoly on the content and its distribution. It is not a good system. I have to say, here in the United States, CNN, which we're going to talk about in a second, has become the Ukraine war porn channel. It's basically wall-to-wall Ukraine war. It's as if nothing else is happening. I saw not one story about Macron's run against Marie Le Pen, for instance, or even salacious stuff like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. It was all Ukraine all the time. I started to watch BBC World News, and you're getting news. So I'm grateful. Thank you for paying your license fees, Nate.
Well, yeah, I mean, you pay for it in a different way as well, because if you look at something like BBC America or DVD sales and the license deals that go out.
Glad to pay for it. Yeah.
Those sorts of things also, they fold in. They're under a different arm of the BBC. Yeah. There's BBC Worldwide and so on. So there's a lot to be said for what the BBC does, and I personally would hate for it to go away in any significant way. But there are also ways I'd love to bring it up to date. And frankly, you could pay more. I mean, it's been around for decades and decades, and there are so many old programs that are just sitting in vaults and archives somewhere that aren't online. All the old Doctor Who's, they're always the ones that people bring out as an example. Like, that is an insane and huge back catalogue of extremely valuable IP that if you put all those online and said to international audiences, hey, pay this and you get all of this as well, that's going to please license fee payers. I'm sure please a lot of people who are watching this right now, being able to get ad-free, very low-cost access to a lot of old stuff. But you cannot please everyone. One size doesn't fit all. Blah blah blah. Insert your metaphor here, but it's interesting compared to Netflix.
I should, by the way, clarify. I think the war in Ukraine is extremely important. I'm not saying that it's unimportant. I'm saying we don't need wall-to-wall coverage, we need coverage, and we should have coverage, but there are other stories that are also important going on. And
we need dispassionate coverage.
Well, it's really clear now. I don't know what you get in Italy, but it's really clear now when I watch CNN that they've decided that war is good for ratings.
Oh, of course.
And just there's no news. It's just let's keep talking to people in basements and looking at blown up buildings. And I don't think it's at the very least, if you want to cover Ukraine war, let's talk about what's going on and the geopolitics of it. And there's lots more to talk about. CNN is partly this is happening because CNN is currently rudderless, and that's the other streaming story today. CNN Plus, which was launched last month with great fanfare and $300 million in marketing, has just been shuttered. They gave up, canceled. It's over.
Leo, I never even knew what CNN Plus was. I never heard about CNN Plus. So the first time I heard of CNN Plus was when they said it was going to shut down. I was like, oh, okay, sure, why not?
So it's a complicated story because it's part of that story of the rolling up of content by distributors. AT&T owned Time Warner, which owned HBO and CNN, divested of it because they realized we're a phone company, and Discovery bought it. So the problem was that Discovery, I think, is not yet running it, or they just started running it, and they could not tell Warner, don't launch this. We aren't going to do it. Get it. Stop it. Don't stop. That Warner was going to spend $1 billion to get subscribers, but it's not allowed if you're in the process of acquiring a company to tell the company how to be run. So they could say nothing. The day that the merger happened, they said, okay, and by the way, that's CNN Plus. That's got to go. It was kind of sad. There are a lot of people who quit their job to go to work for CNN Plus, including Chris Wallace. It's quite a stunning, I think, black mark on the reputation of CNN. But also, at the same time, CNN Plus didn't have any live news. So I think it was destined to die anyway. Apparently, what was happening in Warner, we had stories that from Axios and others that there were only 10,000 daily active viewers. The New York Times implies that was leaked by Warner to tank CNN Plus. I'm not Warner, by Discovery to tank CNN Plus. It's really quite a soap opera. So it just feels like the streaming world is in quite an uproar this week.